Sisto Says, New York City from the ground up. I'm here filming episode number 2 with a dear friend of mine, Lou Madigan. Lou is a longtime colleague of Madigan Development. Lou and I met long time ago, 16 years ago, when the rezoning of Williamsburg was at
That's right.
was at its infancy stage.
Yes.
Lou actually came into my office right here where we are and interviewed me for a project which got built, big success. Then a few years later, built the second one, which is another great success. Lou was an integral part of the vision, the site location, dealing with the architects, acting as the owner, and the capacity of a beautiful condo building. So, Lou, we fast forward, you know, times have changed, my friend.
Yes.
Times have changed, and we've done other developments with your team in a different role. But we're here today to talk about the challenges,
Yes.
because today the 421A has been halted for new construction. We do have a current program that goes out to 2026. A lot of buzz. Developers are uncomfortable with the interest rates and trying to make the projects feasible. So we have a lot of permits, but we're not sure a lot of them are going to get built. So knowing that you have a vibrant personality, and I believe that you would be a great person, and that's why I asked you to come on to our second show to talk a little bit about, the challenges of this 421A, to talk a little bit about office to residential conversion, which seems to be a very hot topic. So you're in Manhattan, you're always looking at sites. Tell us what's going on.
Well, we're doing development on 7 sites currently. And given the current financial market and regulatory environment when it comes to rentals, we mostly develop rentals. The future of New York is Jersey City.
100%.
Because right now it is impossible to develop rental product in New York City that makes any money unless you bought the land in the 1970s and you're converting up and you're putting the land in for nothing.
Correct. I mean, I've been hearing the same vibe that companies that were strictly New York City builders, big organizations that have thousands and thousands of apartments, have always built in New York City, and now they're in D.C., they're in Philly, they're in Jersey, they're in Nashville. They just basically, I hate to say it this way, but they packed up their bags and left.
That's right. The rent reform that happened in 2019, which made it impossible to recoup investments you make in an apartment in the rent of the next tenant, right?
Correct.
Not with the person who's living there, but when that tenant leaves and another tenant comes in, that you get to recoup the investments you've made to improve the building, has made it impossible to make money by owning, acquiring existing housing stock and improving it, which has been a major part of New York City's business
From generation to generation.
That's right, except the 1970s when people burned their buildings down
on purpose.
because you couldn't collect enough rent to cover the taxes, right? And if New York keeps in the direction it's going,
we're going to be back there.
We're going to be back there. Right? There's a housing crisis. We should be building affordable housing. I've been building affordable housing since 2006.
Correct.
And to make it, to create a situation where you can't really make money on market rate housing, and with my support, de Blasio implemented mandatory inclusionary housing. We have a mandatory inclusionary housing site in Soho. Happy to do it. We built 111 Varick, which is a few blocks away from there, with inclusionary housing.
Awesome project.
And to have mandatory inclusionary housing where you're losing money forever, right? So you're being forced at 25% of the units you build.
Apartments for the city for free.
That's right. And you're going to lose, and the rent you collect, $26 a square foot, does not cover the operating cost to keep the building lit and heated. And then you take away the tax abatement for which you're supposed to make it affordable to build that affordable housing, which you're now mandatorily required to build, now makes it impossible to build any residential housing.
I'd like to piggyback on something that you said, Lou. on the very first episode, we talked about relationships. We talked about relationships in New York City and how they work and what it means to have clients for a long period of time. And we had a client who owns a lot of apartments in New York City. And we used to file 2 to 3 apartments a month where someone would move out, they would spend 80, $100,000 in the apartment, and they would renovate it, and then they would recoup their rents going forward, as you said, as part of the, you know, the 2019 when they cut that the rent, they adjusted the rent stabilization and all of that. And I remembered something that was very interesting to me, that the gentleman called me in and apologized to me. I said, "What? Why would you apologize?" He says, "I'm apologizing to everyone for the last 30 years that has helped my family renovate these apartments, because I can't give you any more work. I can't give the architect any more work. I can't give the engineer any more work. I have crews that go from apartment to apartment. Their dads worked for my dad. Their kids work for me, and I have to let them all go because we're not going to spend $100,000 on every apartment to get a $60 raise in rent."
Yeah.
It's just, the law doesn't make sense
Right.
for them.
There's a housing crisis in this city.
Oh, and every day, the last seminar I was at Biz Now, to give them a plug, they talked about that every day that goes by, we're in the deficit by thousands of apartments.
That's
So
right.
we started at 425,000 a few months ago. The other day, I pick up the one of the papers, and in the magazine, they're talking that we're at 550 already.
The problem is that, and again, as a New York Democrat, as a progressive, I founded a community health center. We provide primary care to 6,600 people, anyone who walks in the door, without regard to ability to pay or legal status. I'm not just in it for the money, right? I believe in the public good.
Absolutely.
But right now, it is New York Democrats who believe the whole conversation about housing is about price controls.
Correct.
That the problem with housing is price controls. There aren't enough price controls. And I remember once seeing de Blasio on Morning Joe one day saying, as mayor, I wish I could set the rent of every apartment in New York City.
Right.
Are you nuts?
Yeah.
And the problem, he's already setting the rent for probably half the apartments in New York City.
Correct.
And you're destroying housing. And if there was a shortage of milk, someone might say we should get more cows.
Well,
but right, that's not the mindset
No.
of New York Democrats. New York Democrats, if there's a shortage of housing, we should just have price controls because that'll solve everything.
And the part that I don't understand, as you know, being in an expediter, being in the code and zoning, the city is very difficult to navigate to begin with.
Yes.
Correct? So that's always a problem to begin with. Then you want developers to come into a place where they're not at times construction friendly,
No.
right? And then you're asking them to build apartments for free? What person, what bank is going to give people money for them to lose? It just defeats the whole purpose of what you're trying to accomplish. So right now, since June, we used to probably read 8 to 10 RFPs a month for new buildings in the affordable market rate world. We have given out probably 2 new buildings for apartments that are only condominiums. High-end, expensive, beautiful locations will do nothing to solve the affordable housing crisis.
That what's standing in the way of more housing being available. In Soho, there was a Soho rezoning, right?
Yeah.
That made residential housing in Soho
available,
made it
Right.
legal to develop, right? And you can, in some of the areas, a 10 FAR, right? So we could create some real quality
Sure.
new
10
housing,
10 is-
mandatory inclusionary. So 25% of every unit is going to be inclusionary, ultra low income, right? So we're talking about half those units are going to go to the homeless or near homeless.
Wow.
No joke, right? Why is no one building? Because there's a lawsuit from white liberals in Soho trying to prevent it from being implemented.
Right, because
they don't want to have their neighborhood transformed.
Right.
And the city, as part of the rezoning, made people who were living in illegal housing have to pay a fee to make it legal housing.
Right.
And their lawsuit claims that they shouldn't have to pay that fee. And the whole thing is improper because we've been living in our illegal housing for decades.
Right.
And even though you're offering to make it legal now, we shouldn't have to pay for it. We should get our ill-gotten gain for free at no cost, and we should keep it.
Well, I have a question for you. So, I keep reading about, the office to residential conversion. And it's funny that the very few that we've looked at here at Design that developers have brought to us, to me, has nothing to do with affordable housing.
No.
The ones that I looked at are in incredibly beautiful neighborhoods in Midtown Manhattan or, Upper East Side, where there were some old office buildings, and they want to convert them to, very expensive, beautiful loft buildings, or loft type.
I feel attacked.
No.
No, we're doing that. We're one of those people, yes.
And I'm not blaming the developer.
Right.
I'm all for it. If you have a vacant office building that's going to sit there and be an eyesore and people can live in it, we should, every square footage of building should be utilized for a purpose in my mind. That's what we want to promote here.
And there's 90 million square feet of unoccupied
Right.
offices in New York City today. 90 million square feet.
Correct.
That's like hundreds and hundreds of football fields of unoccupied office space right now.
And we all see it because every time I go visit a client, I walk in the lobby and there's a big sign that says space available, right? And then I leave there and I walk around the corner and I see commercial space on the first floor available everywhere.
Retail all over the city.
It's all over the place. So, one of the things that when I look at this and I read about it, it seems like there's this idea that these office buildings are going to get converted to affordable housing. Do you see incentives in there that will promote that?
No, without 421A, again, there's no tax abatement to create affordable housing. So there's no way you can convert an empty hotel or an empty office building into affordable housing and make it work.
So besides the 421A program, there's no other programs that would incentivize.
That's correct. There's no other program that can incentivize it.
To me, so again, where as a developer, as an entrepreneur, how do you do that where you can help give back affordable housing if there's no incentives, if you got to foot the whole bill? How does that work? It doesn't.
You can look at red states and blue states, and housing is cheaper in red states. And you say, well, why is that? Maybe because there's less people in red states. And that's true. There are less people in red states.
Okay.
But that's not the only reason, right? Because there's plenty of people in Florida, plenty of people in Texas.
Right.
It's that when people show up and they want to live there, someone can build them a house. And real estate developers, given their natural tendencies, would build till they put themselves out of business.
Right.
And we all know what will make rents go down: empty apartments. And in the middle of the pandemic, we had tens of thousands of empty apartments in New York City, and the rents tanked.
Yeah, no doubt.
Believe it or not, supply and demand works in the housing market.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's amazing how that's true, right? Office buildings are a particular challenge, right? Many of them, most of them, are built on a density that is illegal for residential housing.
Correct.
Because the maximum residential density in New York City is a 10 FAR of 12 with affordable housing, right, and the maximum commercial density is 15, right, and can be even higher.
Correct.
Right? And so if you were to take an office building, and then try to convert it to residential, typically the dimensions are not correct.
Correct.
Right? Because
office
buildings
don't have enough
are built,
light and air.
That's right. Office buildings are built deeper.
Right.
And when we build residential buildings, they're typically not more than 70 to 75 feet wide.
Right.
So you have two 30-foot deep apartments and a corridor hallway between them.
Right.
But office buildings are often built 100 feet deep. There's a lot of 100 by 100 office buildings in New York City, and they're too deep. They don't have the right elevators, right? And they don't have the right lobby, and they're oversized, right? So you'd end up having to shave off large sections of the building,
and
to make them work, and which means you're not saving any money, right? So it's going to cost you the same amount to renovate an office building into roughly the same amount, renovate an office building into residential as it would to build it from the ground up.
Correct.
And so the same economics are at place. If you want affordable housing in these office buildings, then you need to change the law and make an incentive to do it.
So, Lou, back in the day, when I first started, there was a section in the multiple dwelling law that was a really incredible piece. And our office became, I wouldn't say experts, but we were a really good, solid firm. That firms came to us and said, "Look, I got a commercial building. There was Article 7B. We were able to take and do what they called a loft conversion, but really, in reality, was a commercial building to an apartment." And there, those laws were written a long time ago. And when this whole concept of converting offices to residential, the first thing that hit my mind was I read those sections of the multiple dwelling law over and over, and how they gave us concessions, right?
Yes.
That you could use a lot line window as long as it had a sprinkler. We could use a stair again. If you put concrete, if you put a Q deck over this, you can get an extra rating. If you rated the side walls, they gave you options to promote it.
Yes.
So now you're looking at this huge office building, and I once asked the developer this recently. I said, "So we have a big square tower that goes straight up for 30 floors. How are we going to get light in there without drilling a core right down the middle to make an inner court?"
Right.
And when you start to think of it that way, then you say to yourself, "Well, how are they going to demo it? They got to demo it down the building and out. The cost is astronomical."
Correct.
It's and then once you open it up, when was it built? How much asbestos is in it? How much lead is in it? What's here? What's there? It sounds like this great concept of reusing the frame, but in reality, when you go to apply the 2022 code,
Right.
it's going to cost you 3 times as much.
We looking at a property right now, which we're looking to acquire, an empty office building for a business that went out of business, had an owner occupied office building that closed their business, and we think we're saving roughly $50 a foot between building ground up. If we started over and built from the ground up, as opposed to renovating the building that's
Yeah,
there.
but you're assuming that without any hidden surprises.
Correct, exactly right.
Once you open it
That's
up, and
correct.
then now all of a sudden one little thing goes wrong, and that $50 a square foot gets cut down to $40 a square foot.
And but you see, it's there's from a developer perspective, it's almost worth it, because when we're building ground up, right, our greatest risks are in the soil,
Correct.
right? When we're in the soil, we may move the building next door. When we built 111 Varick, we had a building built in 1870 on one side.
You had
We
the tunnel.
the New York City subway on the other side.
And a
We had
sign.
the Holland Tunnel on a third side. We literally had to put the facade of the building up from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m.
No, but it was incredible.
A lot of work, right? So and we went down 100 feet to bedrock to put that building. Literally drove 60 caissons into bedrock to hold the building up, and 30 to hold the building down in the case of an earthquake or hurricane. And
So 50% of it was to keep it from falling
over, right? So and we're in the ground. So when we're doing renovations, we're not in the ground.
Right.
And when you're out of the ground, it's manpower, material, and money, right?
Correct.
You're in control of your destiny when you're out of the ground. With a renovation project, every time you open a wall, you can find something different.
Right.
We did a renovation in Jersey City. The developer had drop ceilings in the corridor. You remove the drop ceiling, there's no fireproofing between the corridor and the apartment. Literally every time you look someplace,
You find
you
another
never know
problem.
what you're going to find, and your costs can go through the roof that way. And that's the situation when you're doing renovation. So while you don't have the risk of being in the ground, you have the risk of unknowns, and maybe it balances out in the end. We hope so. This is our first office to resi conversion, and it's an experiment. It's only a 70,000 square foot building.
That's a nice sized building.
Not bad for a start, right? But
Right.
it's really this exercise to get our crews trained, our feet wet, our mindset, getting a team together to be able to do this, because there's more coming.
Right, and also from that part of it, even design, we've thrown our name in the hat to be part of the revisions to the building code. One of Lauren Babiak at our office, we've asked the building department. They were looking for subject matter experts to be part of the new code, and I'm curious to see how they're going to try to adapt the zoning and the building code to incentivize this. You know, protect the people that are going to live there, protect the firemen that have to come fight that fire, God forbid, in the future, and still make it a safe place for the people to live and for it to work for the developer to promote this. And for us, it's a learning curve, right? When we first got to Williamsburg, there was this whole new zoning, and everybody thought they knew it until you put it on paper and went to the building department and you realize, well, they're not interpreting that, Lou, the way we think. And we did townhouses, and we did this, and we did that, and we did terraces, and so I'm that is uncharted waters. Are they going to use the Article 7B of the multiple dwelling law to do these conversions? Are they going to create? So,
We're relying on that.
yeah,
Yes, we're still
yeah.
relying on
So,
Article 7B.
again,
Yes.
you're just like me starting a podcast about the New York City Building Department and code and zoning and construction. You're a pioneer right now because hopefully you acquire the site and we're going to work together and get the approval. But we're going to be up against some challenges because they don't have experience.
Right.
The plan examiner, and that's no fault of theirs, but
Right.
like you said, there's going to be a flood of this to
That's
happen.
right.
You're not the only, I know you're a smart guy, Lou, very smart, but you're not the only game in town, right? There's
Of
going to
course.
be other developers that are trying to do the same exact thing.
I think that we have a host of challenges in the city, right? One of them I think is the biggest challenge that we're facing, and we've faced it a long time, and it's only gotten worse. Is no one wants to be in our industry, right? We are in a situation where a lot of businesses are having a shortage of manpower, right?
Even in our industry,
At this
it's a
point,
dying breed.
no one wants to pour concrete for a living.
No.
Everyone wants to be, running cameras and being media people or be an app programmer. And no, they come out of school and say, I want to be a mason tender. I want to be a carpenter.
Correct.
We just don't have the skilled labor. And so we dumb down designs and we find places where we can factory manufacture finishes so that we don't have to rely on skilled labor on site to do it.
Yes, it's definitely from the few contractors that I speak to that do union work, they do a lot of government work, and they're saying that the apprenticeship program they cannot find young men and women to come in anyone, whether you talk to the plumbing union, you talk to the electrical union, it is incredibly difficult. So there's no doubt that labor is a problem throughout the city. You go to a restaurant, people complain. I went to dinner a few weeks ago here in Williamsburg, and a friend of mine owns a restaurant. And they got a big place. I'm like, you said you were booked tonight. There's 13 open tables. They're like, sister, we have the chef. Right. We don't have staff.
That's right.
And they're paying for that square footage.
That's
and
right.
Then we want to understand why this commercial real estate is at an all-time low of empty, at an all-time high of empty spaces. I was reading something a few weeks ago that talked about with today's technology, today's products, today's information-based world where you can see things that they use in a product in Germany or they use it in Switzerland, that how the cost of construction has not come down because the products have gotten better. And it was very interesting that it actually has gotten more expensive.
Correct.
And when I read that, I was like, you think about them building the Empire State Building, right? And then you think about them building a building today, and there's so much better technology. There's infrared to see if you got a leak and this. And back then, a guy went around and he looked to see if there was water coming in the building. Now they can scan a whole building and let you, and yet it costs more, and I'm not sure we're putting out a better product.
I really think that's because of the shortage of qualified workforce and management for that labor and operators of those companies. We build mostly, not exclusively, but mostly non-union. And, the non-union guys, they have one or two managers who can manage 4 or 5 people, maybe 6, and they really can't manage more than that.
Right.
And so their capacity to do work is limited by not having qualified management, not having qualified workers. And between the two, we're stuck with having to build a low quality product that's dumbed down and having high prices because
Materials.
And not just non-materials, but there's only like 3 plumbers I trust.
Right.
And so they know what each other, they know what they're charging, and they can charge a higher premium.
Absolutely. So Lou, to end the second podcast, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for coming down and speaking to us and speaking to New York City. You're a fabric in New York City like myself. Um, been around a long time doing it, and we love it.
The corruption that once existed
Is not here.
is really not here anymore. It really is a lot in the non-union world. It's a lot of small business people trying to do the best they can.
Absolutely.
In a tough environment. And so in a lot of ways, it's a better industry. It's incredibly fulfilling, and the pay is pretty good. If you don't know what to do with your life, become a plumber or a carpenter or open an engineering company.
Absolutely.
And it's a great, fulfilling life.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Lou.
Same here.
Thank you.
Sisto.